It's a brutally slow news day. There's a lot of bickering in politics. There's a lot of concern over what's happening at the southern border. And there are a lot of small updates to big stories, but nothing particularly profound. And you want to know why? You want to know why it's funny that I'm saying that and why I was excited to lead with what a slow news day? Is because we have a poll, a new poll. The Daily Caller reports less than half of Americans say Biden is mentally stable enough to serve as president. Okay, my friends, normally I like to talk about the big issues of the day and things that are really important. And since the launch of timcast.com, it's become increasingly more robust, in my opinion, that we have a team of journalists, reporters, aggregators, field reporters, all talking about things that are going on, actually makes my job substantially easier. And so, as we go through the news of the day, trying to figure out what's important, what you need to know about, got a whole lot of nothing. I mean, there's some updates on the budget bill, and I definitely think we should go through that because if the United States doesn't raise the debt ceiling, which is, I think, coming up in a few weeks, then the U.S. will have a government shutdown. It's not really the apocalypse, but it's pretty bad. I mean, the government's already been liquidating assets. And so we're having this conversation. I say, hey, look, there's a poll that less than half of Americans say Biden is mentally stable enough to serve as president. Ergo, more than half think he's not mentally stable enough, or I think it's the plurality anyway. And the response I got from, the crew is that really news? And I was like, I mean, we should be telling the American people that our president is not viewed as fit and that his approval ratings declining and his favorability is down and that he's struggling with his vaccine mandates. Unions are in opposition. They're saying no to him. They're rejecting his policy. Democrats are failing to put forward Biden's domestic agenda. It's crumbling before our eyes. The border's in shambles. Afghanistan's a mess. Inflation is rising. And the response is that's all been happening. It's just getting worse. Are we really informing people to tell them that people view Biden as unfit when all of this stuff is happening? All of this stuff is escalating. And I've said now 50 billion times over the past week, the republic is falling. Man, talk about a slow news day. I mean, there's a bit going on. We have new data that they're saying a booster shot of Johnson & Johnson is effective after 2 months. And so the conversation drifts from vaccine mandates to boosters every 8 months, then 5 months, and now 2 months. I don't know if you do a booster every 2 months, but they're saying after 2 months. And we got a president who's not all there. So here's what I think matters. I kind of don't think I should let my bias and frustrations inhibit me from doing a segment talking about the fact the American people see Biden as mentally unfit. I don't know if they're saying the majority say less than half of Americans say Biden is mentally stable enough. So it's probably a large proportion saying he is mentally unfit and a decent amount saying he's maybe, and less than half is the plurality. I think it's important because if we go to the point where we become desensitized to the shocking reality of the failures of our existing administration, if we normalize that, that's when we lose. Because I'll put it this way. If we stop coming out and telling people this is not normal and we accept it as normal, then what happens come 2024? We sit back and we say, we're used to an incompetent, unfit president who's causing massive catastrophe and failure. No, I think that's really, really bad. And so the best we can do is just say this is there's more reason than ever to explain to you that we have a serious problem in the White House. And this matters now with the budget negotiations between Democrats and Republicans. I'm not a big fan of the Republican Party, but they're threatening to obstruct the debt ceiling bill because Democrats are once again trying to bypass the normal rules, bypass the filibuster, which I think is just shows that we're in decline, my friends. We're showing how bad it's really getting. But let me first show you the sentiment from the public. And then I think the challenge is when it comes to the budget bill and the spending bill, a lot of people don't care about this and they ignore it, but it matters. So let's read the story from the Daily Caller. But before we do, head over to timcast.com, become a member, and you'll get access to exclusive members-only segments in the Timcast IRL podcast, as well as an ad-free experience on the website. And you will be helping support our field reporters who go on the ground. You'll be supporting our independent journalism as they report on important issues like 2 men arrested in New Zealand for smuggling KFC into COVID lockdown Auckland. And you'll just be helping out. But don't forget, like this video, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. I got to tell you, it is a very serious challenge. I'm looking at this story. Less than half of Americans say Biden is mentally stable enough to serve as president. And I'm just like, what else is new? Well, let's read and see what the latest update is. They say from the Daily Caller, confidence in Biden's mental fitness has continuously dropped since July, when only 39% of Americans said he was mentally unfit. Just 49% of respondents to Monday's poll were confident that Biden is mentally fit enough to serve as president, while 48% believe he is not. So it is the plurality that believes he is mentally fit enough, but not even the majority. Fox said the poll, conducted September 12th to 15th, has a 3% margin of error. Democratic respondents to the poll also outnumbered Republican respondents 44% to 39%. And there it is. I think it's fair to say, based off the fact that this is weighted towards Democrats, Joe Biden is seen widely by the American people as being mentally unfit for this job. America's apparent falling confidence in Biden has also manifested in his approval rating, which has continued to fall since June. The Reuters Ipsos poll put the president at just 44% approval on Thursday, a steep drop from 54% approval he enjoyed when he entered office. Swaths of Americans are turning sour on Biden's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, according to the poll, with his disapproval rating sitting at 50%. Biden's current polling is among the lowest for any sitting president at the time in office, excepting former President Donald Trump, who said at 38% approval his first year. Biden's troubles began with Americans' lack of confidence in his immigration policies. And while he came into office with a high approval rating for his COVID-19 policies, just 48% approve of those policies now. Biden also took a hit thanks to his handling of the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. While the vast majority of Americans supported ending the 20-year-long war, polling indicates they did not approve of how Biden executed the withdrawal. I have to wonder, my friends, if we are burning out. I don't mean in terms of doing work. I'm more than happy to do work all day, every day, and I got a ton of stuff in the pipeline. But I just mean, how many times can we watch a president fail, his administration flounder and flail, to where we just say, we get it. No confidence. That's a challenge for me, because I got to admit, going through this data and looking at this stuff is painful. Absolutely painful. Do you approve or disapprove of the way Joe Biden is handling his job as president? 59% of independent voters disapprove, 30% approve. Of course, you know that if I show you Republicans, they overwhelmingly disapprove. When I show you Democrats, he's actually been losing support from Democrats slowly over time, which is really shocking considering they live in a mainstream media cult world where they believe fake news and lies and clickbait garbage. But going through this and saying it for the 50 billionth time, wow. We have other news, though. Stuff that I think is very, very important that you need to understand. Glenn Greenwald tweets, Politico reporter Shrek Reports has a new book confirming the emails from Hunter Biden's laptop about Joe Biden's business deals in China and Ukraine are genuine. People complaining about pre-election censorship by Google in Russia cheered big tech censoring this reporting. And yes, this is true. My friends, welcome to the misery that is Joe Biden's administration. It is so bad that when we finally get mainstream media confirmation about what we knew with the big guy getting a cut in, that his son was doing these deals, that Joe Biden's flying him to China, and we all know it already. We know it already. That's how screwed up the administration is. And it's just like, I got to be honest, I'm contemplating, you know what? I'm going to put up a story saying we know Biden is bad, post in the community section and say, don't even do a video segment on this. And then I realized how screwed up it was that it's not news for me to tell you we've confirmed Hunter Biden's emails from the laptop were genuine. Because we all knew they were, because we're not morons. But how many people lied? When I say that Joe Biden is seen as unfit, and it's like, yes, we understand there's a border crisis. People are tired of it. They're like, we get it. The border's fallen. We get it. The separation of powers is over. And I'm just like, man, what more is there to be said? Do we just dust off our hands, pack it in, and go start growing our own food in our own plot of land out in the middle of nowhere, perhaps West Virginia? This is the state of the country that we're in. Democrats don't care for the most part that this stuff is true because we've known it's true. Political reporting it will change nothing. Check this out. Let me read it, though. The Bidens inside the first family's 50-year rise to power finds evidence that some of the reported Hunter Biden laptop material is genuine.
including 2 emails at the center of last October's controversy. A person who had independent access to Hunter Biden's emails confirmed he did receive a 2015 email from Ukrainian businessman thanking him for the chance to meet Joe Biden. The same goes for a 2017 email in which a proposed equity breakdown of a venture with Chinese energy executives includes the line, quote, 10 held for H by the big guy. The person recalled seeing both emails, but was not in a position to compare the leaked emails word for word to the originals. This is what we need to realize. Perhaps this is why I show you this poll, that Democrats actually are slowly souring. In June, Biden had 88 approval among Democrats. Today, 84%. So it is slowly going down, but I don't know if it's going down enough to matter. The point is, this should be something we show regular people. When they say you're wrong and Joe Biden's fine, when they say you're far right, you're MAGA, you're lying, we say, just please pay attention. I think, one of the issues that I'm probably dealing with seeing all this news and being like, we know about the emails, we know about the border, we know about the unions, we know about the vaccines, we know about the boosters. I don't want to get to the point where we're desensitized, where we're demoralized, where we know it's happening. And perhaps when a bunch of this information comes out that plays into the narrative that Joe Biden is failing and people recognize it, we should absolutely bring this together and share it and tell people what's going on. Glenn Greenwald says, as a reminder, this is what happened. It was obvious from the start the Hunter docs were authentic. They concerned Joe's activities, not Hunter's. The CIA lied, saying it was Russian disinformation. Big tech and media united to censor the reporting to protect Biden. He says the Intercept, founded in 2014 before the current editors arrived, was created to be adversarial to CIA security state. Used as an ex-New York Times reporter to mindlessly endorse the CIA lie that the Hunter docs were Russian disinformation. He says the Intercept was founded on the view that it was urgent to have media outlets adversarial to the CIA's lies. It's so easy to recognize and denounce the censorship, repression, and propaganda in distant countries. We're taught from childhood to hate Russia. It's more difficult and more important to recognize in our own. Pre-election censorship of the story was a disgrace. One final point. When Facebook announced that it would algorithmically suppress this reporting, it did so through a lifelong Democratic operative, Andy M. Stone, who claimed it was being done only until they did a fact check on the docs. It never came. Why? Because the docs were real. Amazingly, Facebook and Andy Stone, having interfered in our elections by suppressing a story the CIA, the Intercept, and other media outlets lied about by claiming it was Russian disinformation, now refuses to answer questions about the outcome of that fact check. When asked, Andy said, "While I will intentionally not link..." Oh, I'm sorry. Apparently, he did not respond at all. That was just a quote tweet. Glenn mentions that he went on when this happened and called it out. One interesting aspect of the fact that it's a Politico reporter with a new book confirming the authenticity of the Hunter docs, it was Politico, through the co-queen of Russiagate frauds, Natasha Bertrand, who first used CIA to dismiss the docs as Russian disinformation. Beyond the Intercept, of all places, laundering CIA lies to justify its refusal to allow reporting on the Biden archive, here were the 2 most repulsive examples. The NPR public editor on why it refused to discuss the story. And this one I find fascinating. The public editor said, "Why haven't you seen any stories from NPR about New York Post's Hunter Biden story?" They said, "We don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories, and we don't want to waste the listeners' and readers' times on stories that are just pure distractions." Here's what I find fascinating about this. October 22nd, 2020, just before the election. Information that was extremely important, potentially an October surprise that would have cost Joe Biden the election. Why did NPR need to address a story that wasn't a story to people who never heard about it? NPR issuing a statement shows the story was newsworthy enough that people were asking, and they weren't going to cover it. Why? I think the truth is they cover for Joe Biden, and it's fairly obvious to everyone. Now, what we're seeing now is an all-out failure of the Biden administration across the board. Now, I know you know about the border and the economy and the inflation, all that stuff, and it makes it really difficult to explain to you what's going on. Mostly because we know the gist of it, we have the finer details, and do we really need to be reminded? But we do have news. Democrats fear Biden's domestic agenda could implode. Let me put it this way. Not only have the American people lost faith in Joe Biden, the Democratic Party has no faith in his agenda, and they think it's going to collapse. AOC and the squad have forced the Democrats to remove $1 billion in funding for Israel's Iron Dome defense from spending. What we're seeing here, in my opinion, is the collapse. And that's the challenge. I know you know, right? When AOC and the squad forced the Democrats to abandon support, the support for Israel, the military defense for the Iron Dome. I mean, the Iron Dome is defensive. It just goes to show you that the establishment is losing power. It's cause for optimism, I suppose. The establishment Democrats are losing their ability to control the narrative. They're losing their ability to push their agenda. And I suppose the only thing standing in their way right now would be Mitch McConnell. I don't think he'll do anything, though. I think we might see the Democrats squeak on by. However, the way things are going, they may squeak by now. They may get this agenda through very narrowly. But where are we at? Within a year, are we going to see the Democrats losing massive support as these narratives continues, as Biden proves to be the failure that we knew he was? I think the answer is yes. We all knew it was going to be bad under Biden. Did we think it would be this bad? I mean, some of us probably yes, particularly the Trump supporters and those who said Biden was calling a lid because he wasn't doing anything. But you see the decline in support and you see the people saying he's not mentally fit. I think people are starting to wake up to how bad things really are. Political reports. Internal Democratic discord has wounded President Joe Biden's massive social spending plan, raising the prospect the package could stall out, shrink dramatically, or even fail altogether. Myriad problems have arisen. Moderate Senate Democrat Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema continue to be major headache for the party's leadership's $3.5 trillion target. The Senate parliamentarian just nixed the party's years-long push to enact broad immigration reform. House members may tank the prescription drugs overhaul the party has to run on for years. And a fight continues to brew over Senator Bernie Sanders' push to expand Medicare. Quote, if any member of Congress is not concerned that this could fall apart, they need treatment, said Rep. Emanuel Cleaver, who warned his party will pay for it at the polls. If it fails in enacting Biden's agenda, our caucus has the feeling of freedom to support or oppose leadership. This is actually kind of huge. What we're seeing is that from the moderate Democrats to rank and file Democrats, they are not lining up with Biden's and the Democrats' proposal on this $3.5 trillion budget. This is the fracturing. Now, we've known the Democratic Party has been kind of in shambles and fighting within itself for some time. But now we're seeing complete disinterest from populists and Trump supporters, uninterested in what Democrats are even proposing, and Democrats completely unable to rally together popular support within their own party. We knew the Democrats were struggling to do this, and I got to say, I predicted this would happen. During the election last year and the years before, I said if there continues to be a divide, eventually it comes to a point where Democrats do not function like a unified party. Typically, we see, like in 2018, when the 31 moderate Democrats, I think it was 31, ended up winning their districts, flipping Trump districts to Democrat members of Congress. It seemed like the people were saying, we want real issues. We don't want culture war. We don't want Republicans. And it was a backlash. What happened? The Democrats got in and immediately just played culture wars. So what do I think we see? Regular people have tuned out. There's no path towards solving our problems through Congress when Congress is more interested in culture war BS than anything else. And if the best that these politicians have to offer is some kind of tribal victory, then they're not going to do anything. I got a text message from someone running against Lauren Boebert. And she didn't message me saying, hey, I would like to propose these policy positions. I want to make these changes in Congress. This is what the problem I want to solve is. She said, Lauren Boebert is bad and you must help me fight the far right. And I'm like, if this is the best you have to offer, that you're going to come to me and say, I hate that other person, therefore give me money, we are done. I think there are problems that need to be solved. But we have two distinct cultures in this country that don't care to talk to each other anymore. And this is what I said the other day hanging out with Alex Jones. We had him on the podcast. Alex goes off the rails talking about the Illuminati and Thomas Jefferson. And I'm like, I got no idea what's going on. But he did say that I was brave to have him. And sure, I get it. You know, he's a blacklisted individual. But I thought to myself, what's brave about having you on the show? That you might do something to get me banned? I don't think Alex is going to do anything to get me banned. I don't think he wants to do that. And he didn't. But it's brave because, well, what about other people? You know, they'll criticize you. And I'm like, the people in France? I don't care about people in France, what they think. Well, no, not the people in France. I mean, like people here in the United States. And I'm like, yes, The people in New York and California, as far as I'm concerned, may as well be in France because they believe ridiculous things. They live in a ridiculous universe. They vote for Gavin Newsom. They don't fact check, and they think they do. That's what really blows my mind. I'm not going to sit here and rally behind Trump zealots, but I don't see them as having any institutional power, particularly within the Republican Party. Some of them do, but the Republicans don't do anything. The Democrats do lots of stuff. They want to put a path of citizenship in a budget bill to bypass the filibuster. Basically just trying to bypass our traditional system of governance. Joe Biden ruling by decree. I look at these people and I'm like, they're not serious people. Joe Biden doesn't talk to us as if we're on the same team. He talks to us like a rival nation. He says, we're losing our patience. Well, who are you talking to, Joe? You're clearly not talking to blue states overwhelmingly vaccinated. You're talking to the red states. That's right. Joe Biden is clearly showing us the delineation between the two distinct cultures in this country. So that's what it comes to when I see these stories. Mitch McConnell signals Senate GOP will oppose combined debt ceiling funding bill. All right, so the Democrats tried combining their funding bill with the debt ceiling as a force measure, basically saying if we don't increase the debt ceiling, then this country is going to the government shuts down. We could be in danger of default. So they're going to try and force the Republicans by combining it. Mitch McConnell says we're not going to do that. Will this be the moment that Mitch McConnell grows a spine and says, we're not playing your dirty game? If you want to pass the spending bill, you compromise with the other side. And if they won't do it, shut her down. Will Mitch McConnell really do it? I mean, maybe. I don't see him as like anyone willing to really rock the boat. And once the Democrats apply pressure, he'll probably just cave. But this is what I see. No one cares about what the Democrats think. At least on this side, we care about freedom because we've seen them go insane already. Joe Biden coming out. When Joe Biden came, I'll tell you this. When he came out and said, if you have at least 100 employees, everyone's got to get vaccinated. I was like, that's it. Right then and there, he just told half the country that he was not following the norms of our government and that he was not to be taken seriously. And that was it. You see, what you got to understand about confidence in government is that people have to believe in the system. So when we know laws are passed in a certain way, like perhaps we want to increase the debt ceiling, so we propose a bill to do it, there's a compromise. The Democrats try to bypass that by combining it with the spending bill. Democrats try to put immigration reform in the spending bill. They're trying to bypass the normal system of governance. Then conservatives look at that and they say, the system is completely broken. The Democrats are no longer trying to actually legislate or work with us. Joe Biden's addressing us as if we're not even a part of this country or not part of the like the main group, the mainstream. Why would anyone feel like we're actually a functioning government at this point? So that's what I see. When I see the story about Joe Biden's mental health, I don't believe that any of these people who watch CNN care and will listen. And I don't think anybody who already knows it needs to hear it again. So maybe it's time to recognize the republic is shattered. Our border is being bypassed every day by people coming in for carryout. There's no security down there. Governor Greg Abbott's come out saying the feds aren't doing anything. We've got to do it. And for the most part, that is true. And so if we see the border gone, we see violations of the First Amendment, massive multinational corporations. Man, at a certain point, do we just say peaceful divorce is upon us? Because I'll put it this way. I don't think there's any willpower for full-scale civil war. For me, I think violence don't work. I think it's a problem. I think you need to be persuasive. But what happens when both sides don't want to listen to each other? Now, I'll tell you this. I think the Democrat and the corporate media are all lying 99% of the time. Well, maybe not 99, but the cable TV stuff people, they definitely are. No, I use mainstream news reports and stuff like that, but I do think they mislead almost all the time. They have clever framing techniques. Why would I engage with that and be bothered with it? I have no interest in engaging in any kind of conflict with these people who I don't see and don't live anywhere near me. And perhaps they for me. And I wonder how you feel. At which point my priorities have become more so. I don't know if you can hear the faint noise of construction in the background. We're building Chicken City. We're going to have chickens. We got 15 chickens now. We had 7 chickens. They had babies. Now we have 15 chickens. I just find myself reading the news and thinking to myself, so what? I've looked at all the stories about the food shortages. I look at the stories now about mandatory vaccinations. When people tell me, like, I get conservatives saying, like, look how bad this is. And I'm like, I've been thinking about it. It ain't here in West Virginia, Texas, Florida, South Dakota, Wyoming, whatever. It's in New York. Do you live there? Okay, well, New York does what New York wants. There's no desire of anybody to go to New York to fight a conflict. And no one in New York is going to come to West Virginia to fight a conflict. So is this it? Is this it? I kind of feel like the Republican already shattered and the United States exists just in name. I mean, you take a look at that rally they had in D.C. where the Trump supporters were like, don't go. And what did we see? A bunch of feds were there, I guess. Apparently, like, look at this, like some federal officer actually got arrested. The cops saw a guy, he was a federal officer wearing a mask and he had a gun and he had his badge. And they're like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm a federal officer. Here's my badge. And they're like, so you got feds? Did anybody legitimate show up to that? Or is the reality that people just have finally had that snap moment where they're like, I just don't care anymore. When I see the story about the budget failing, when I see another story, like, come on, man, look at this, CNN, 2-dose version of Johnson & Johnson shot 94% effective against COVID-19 study finds. I think the country's been demoralized. I really do. I'm feeling it. I don't mean I've become too pessimistic. I think many people think I'm pessimistic as it is. I view it more as realistic as opposed to idealistic. Ideally, I'd love universal health care. Realistically, I see what they do when they get the power. They centralize it and they're racists. When I see a story and it's like, booster shots are coming, and I'm like, guys, they're going to push booster shots. It's never going to end. Then they say, Fauci and Biden discuss booster shots at 8 months. I'm like, oh, man, see, there it is, 8 months. Then it's the story, well, Fauci and Biden discuss 5 months. Fauci says 8 probably makes more sense, but Biden says maybe 5. I'm like, now it's 5 months? And now it's 2 months? Look at this. A 2-dose version of Johnson & Johnson vaccine provides 94% protection, making a 2-dose regimen comparable to a 2-dose regimen of Moderna or Pfizer's. The company issued the details looking at various aspects. So they ultimately say, I'm pretty sure it's every 2 months, but they said after, I don't know, our large-scale evidence, phase 3 studies confirm a single shot provides perfection, yada, yada. Our single-shot vaccine generates strong immune response, yada, yada. A second study showed people given a booster shot 6 months or longer after the first dose had a 12-fold increase in antibodies compared to a full 4-fold increase in people who got a second dose at 2 months. So protection should be stronger if people get boosters later. Oh, okay. So I'll walk back a little bit. At 2 months, they were saying there was good protection at 2 months. Now they're saying 6 months or longer. So we're still floating. I mean, they've opened the door to 2-month boosters. Anyway, I digress. My complaint isn't so much with the vaccine or whatever. That's between you and your doctor and your medical decisions, taking into consideration everything we've heard from whistleblowers and stuff, which news you may have seen. Take into consideration whatever you can when you do your research. The point is, I just don't think anyone cares. Tractor Supply sold out of horse paste. People don't care. They literally don't care what the mainstream media has to say about it. Doctors apparently don't care. Joe Rogan's prescribing whatever he wants to Joe Rogan, and Howard Stern's mocking the doctor, but Howard Stern's not a doctor. The point is, we're in an era where there's serious censorship. I wonder if Google even cares anymore, to be completely honest. It really does feel like demoralization has slammed in the face of everybody, and today was a particularly harsh day. Because I'm seeing news that should be important. Hunter Biden documents confirmed. Everyone's like, I just don't care. I'm like, okay, well, look, Joe Biden's not mentally fit. Yeah, we know. What else is new? The Democrats are failing in their budget bill. The debt ceiling is going to get hit. We might be looking at a default. And yeah, whatever. And I'm like, wow, man. So here's how it is. It all goes down. The republic falls, not with a bang, but with a whimper. After seeing what's happening on the southern border, looking at the interest people don't have in any of these stories, I'm like, at a certain point, how many times can you hear the border's broken? How many times can you hear the Democrats can't pass bills? How many times can you hear they're increasing the restrictions on COVID mandates until you finally say, look, man, I'm going to go grow some food. I'm going to go play some video games, and I'm going to chill out. I was really tempted, by the way. I was really, really tempted to call it for the day, because I did 2 segments. We got a lot of work we're doing, and I'm like, I don't want to say this stuff over again. But then something kind of hit me at the very last minute, and I said, man, it's really that bad that we're at a point where it's not news. This stuff is happening because we already know. And everyone kind of looks around and shrugs their shoulders, being like, all this bad stuff just got incrementally worse, and we just don't care. That's crazy to me. I don't feel that fire. I'm like, whoa, what unions are going up against Biden? I'm like, yeah, we know. This is September. This is 10 days ago. We know they're doing it. AOC and the squad crippling the Democratic agenda and stripping away funding for Israel's Iron Dome. I'm like, yeah, we knew this was coming. The Democratic Party is going to fall apart. The Republican Party, maybe. Here's another one that's really funny. I found this one was really amazing. There is a lot of news. It's just why Democrats are losing Texas Latinos. We know. They're falling apart. They don't know how to unify. They've been pushing far left insanity. Latinos are getting sick of the illegal immigration. They live in South Texas. They're watching the border crossings. They're seeing the 15,000 people. And what do we get? I'll end with this. The responses from everybody is so insanely predictable, it's not even worth discussing. That you can have 15,000 illegal immigrants walking back and forth over the border getting takeout, and AOC comes out once again and says, migrants are not breaking any laws and must be treated well, and they lie about Border Patrol agents whipping, and I'm just like, yo, we know. But this is what I got to say. Perhaps that's the issue. Not everybody does know. That's kind of the thing that hit me when I was like, I'm not going to talk about this stuff. That's the point I've been trying to drive home the whole time. That if we get to the point where we're so accustomed to the chaos that is the Biden administration, that it's normalized within us, that we start focusing on other things and say, you know what, I'm going to go have a cheeseburger or just, I don't care about this stuff. If we're unwilling to warn people this stuff is happening, then there really will be people, independent voters, who don't hear it. And it becomes the baseline. And that kind of freaks me out. I don't know what we should or shouldn't do other than let's keep talking about these issues and pointing out the administration is in shambles. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.